President Buhari launches new digital economic policies to advance economic development.
Our desire to produce what we eat and consume what we produce is not limited to the literal meaning.
Freed students of Federal College of Forestry Mechanization to reunite with their families today.
And I can tell you with that means that most of them are stable, but the doctors are still working on them. We are waiting for the doctors' evaluation on them.
High flood risk in 28 states and the FCT as NISA releases 2021 flood outlook.
Flash and urban floods from heavy inundation are predicted to occur in some major cities, the severity of which will depend on the availability and adequacy of the drainage systems.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss 2021 flood alert.
All right, now annual release of flooding predictions and outlook has become a ritual in our country. Of course, the predictions presenting probable flood scenarios are always announced months ahead of the raining season, or even when the rains, are just starting, to help Nigerians prepare for the challenges ahead, of course.
And Claire, if the warnings by the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, and that of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, on the 2021 annual flood outlook are anything to go by, the volume of rains during the 2021 wet season is expected to surpass that of previous years.
Well, the rains are already here, and of course Nigerians are not unfamiliar with the attendant flooding and devastation that comes along with it. And if you recall, predictions in the 2020 annual flood outlook occurred the same way it was announced.
Now, true to last year's prediction, 377 local government areas in 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, were severely impacted by flood, while hundreds of thousands of hectares of rice, maize, sorghum, and sugar cane were destroyed. Plus, of course, thousands of houses that were lost to the inundation.
Of course, Kinsley, remember the incident in Kebbi State where a whole rice plantation, was destroyed, and of course that gave rise to concerns about whether we will experience some form of food, insecurity and all that. But luckily,
I recall. We had the governor of Kebbi State join us to discuss what measures were going to be taken to help mitigate the disaster that struck in Kebbi, because the farmers were then on the verge of harvesting their rice, and unfortunately the floods came and overwhelmed their yields. In the same way you had in other states of the Federation, also in the Northwest, that were impacted by last year's flood.
Indeed. So for the 2021 annual flood outlook, Nigerians have been asked to brace up for another intense challenge with a projected high flood risk in 28 states, including the Federal Capital Territory. Now, as the outlook reviews the peak flood flow and also flood aerial coverage in 2021, which is expected to be lower than that of 2020.
Well, the rivers are likely to overflow their banks yet again, and flooding is expected in, as Claire has indicated, 28 states. You can virtually then just remove some 8 states. Then you know that the entire country is going to be affected. Northeast, northwest, and of course north central and south-south. Of course, you're also going to have coastal flooding, as always, in Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Ondo, and Lagos. and River State due to a rise in sea level and tidal surge.
Kingsley, this year I think states were classified within moderate impacted areas and those that are probably will experience less flooding this year.
Well,
and of course,
whatever the categorization is, the key advisory is be prepared.
Be prepared. In fact, that's one of the components of the resilience approach that NISA is, sending across to stakeholders. But again, on account of poor drainage facilities, flash and urban flooding have been forecast to occur in Ibadan, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Sokoto, Kaduna, Yola, Maiduguri, Makurdi, Hadejia, and other major cities. And already the FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has initiated action plans to reduce or mitigate the overbearing effect on people in the territory, with the flag off of the 2021 Flood Assessment and Community Awareness Campaign.
Well, according to data, flooding affects over 2.8 billion people around the world, and most, of course, being the frequent natural disasters in this part of the world. One question that, of course, we're going to keep asking is how prepared are we upon the warnings now being issued by the appropriate agencies, particularly at the state level, Claire. This is very important because part of what has emerged over the years is that the flood alerts are released and state governments are supposed to then take that and help publicize it as well as take up measures to ensure that there is mitigation. But unfortunately, the feedback hasn't been quite encouraging, which is why a number of states get overwhelmed very easily and then they keep crying to the National Emergency Management Agency. And of course...
And the message you keep hearing is those that have been earmarked, to be affected should move to upland, higher grounds. And you wonder where the higher grounds are.
Well, that's part of the challenge is that when you ask them to leave the low-lying areas, there is no alternative accommodation for them in the higher grounds that you're expecting them to move to. So this is part of the reason why the question is also relevant about some of the long-term solutions in sight to the usual devastation and losses occasioned by the floods. Of course, we'll look at these issues and more on Good Morning Nigeria this morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program.
And I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Many thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria this Friday. As always, we are live on the network service of the NTA from our studios here in Abuja. It's the 7th day of May 2021. So do look out for our complimentary segments, and that will include newspaper review. Bayo will be joining us, and there'll be business news, and of course there'll be others in the course of our program. For now, let's join Dennis Adegunloye, who's looking quite handsome this morning, with his... Dennis,
are you suggesting there are days Dennis doesn't look handsome?
There's something about his cap
I think that's what the suggestion is.
All right, Dennis.
Good morning, Claire, and good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria is ready to push higher the existing cordial relations between the country and the Republic of Guinea-Bissau so as to align them with the strategic and economic priorities of the two countries. The president stated this on Thursday after briefing or receiving an audience his Guinea-Bissau counterpart Umaru Sissoko Embalo.
As admitting the aspirations of these people, Nigeria played a significant role in stabilizing.
Two national policies formulated by the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy have been unveiled by President Muhammadu Buhari in furtherance of his administration's efforts at effectively securing the country, enhancing economic development and fighting corruption. They are the National Policy for the Promotion of Indigenous Content in Nigeria's Telecommunications Sector, as well as the revised National Identity Policy for SIM card registration.
As a country, our desire to produce what we eat and consume what we produce is not limited to the literal meaning. Rather, we want to work towards being self-sufficient in every sector of the economy. For the telecom sector, we want Nigerians to play a major role in the design and manufacture of devices, in meeting the manpower requirements, and in becoming an active part of the telecommunication ecosystem of the country.
Now, in what is considered an indication of the in-depth understanding of governance and purposeful partnership with the federal government, the Delta State government has built and handed over a Federal Road Safety Corps Marshal Inspectorate training school to the federal government. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo at the event says effective collaboration between the federal government through its agencies and state governments will bring about more dividends and improved service delivery to Nigerians.
Where we go, we must re-emphasize that our country is great because it is a country of such diverse people, of such diverse salaries, such diverse values. And so when sometimes we hear those who are agitating and advocating that the country should break into little parts, we must say that we must caution them and let them understand that little countries all over the world are not stronger because they are small. As a matter of fact, the smallest countries in our part of the world have experienced the greatest conflict.
The remaining students of the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization, Afaka, Kaduna, released by their abductors on Wednesday, are expected to be formally reunited with their parents on Friday once they are certified fit by medical doctors. The students' jubilant parents had earlier converged on the college, awaiting their reunion.
We have 20 females and 7 males. And I can tell you without mincing words that most of them are stable, but the doctors are still.
The Senate has met with service chiefs and heads of security agencies where it received strategic information on Nigeria's current security situations, its challenges and prospects. Before the meeting, which took place behind closed doors, Senate President Ahmed Lawan acknowledged the role of security operatives so far in fighting insecurity, which he said is affected by inadequate resources.
Because we know that we are doing your best with what you have at hand. But I want to assure you and everyone that the challenges we face are taken extremely seriously by the Parliament. Hardly a day passes without this Senate discussing one security incident or the other.
Nigerians are to brace up for another intense flood challenge this year. A projected high flood risk in 28 states and the Federal Capital Territory suggests that the 2021 flood outlook is expected to surpass that of previous years.
Flash and urban floods from heavy inundation are predicted to occur in some major cities, the severity of which will depend on the availability and adequacy of the drainage systems and adherence to urban planning regulations.
After today, we'll be doing sensitization program, and we would like also to downscale to the states, governors, telling each governor these are the locations in your own states that are likely to be inundated in the course of the year 2021.
28 new COVID-19 infections have been recorded nationwide within the last 24 hours, representing the lowest daily statistics in several months and bringing the country's total confirmed cases to 165,301. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, indicates that among the 28 cases, Lagos has 10 new cases, Rivers 7, Akwa Ibom 6, Delta and the FCT recorded 2 new cases each, while Kaduna recorded a single case. NTDC records show that active cases nationwide remain at 7,812. Total discharged number of and successfully treated patients is 155,424, while the death toll stands at 2,065. Well, that concludes the news highlights for now. Do stay with us. Good Morning Nigeria on the 2021 flood alert continues immediately after this break with Kingsley and Claire. I'm Dennis Adigunloye. Good morning.
My name is Dr. Faisal Shuaib. I am the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Earlier today, I took my first shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Despite all of the delays, all of the doubts, here we are, Nigerians can finally access the vaccines. I hope that Nigerians will come out and get these vaccines because these vaccines are safe, they're effective, and they truly work. Over the course of the next few weeks, we have to continue wearing face masks. We have to do social distancing, but I know eventually once we're able to get herd immunity, then we'll be able to stop all of these non-pharmaceutical interventions. To get the vaccination, you should go to the MPHCDA website. There's a link on there that you click and you can register and schedule exactly where you want to get your vaccine.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
She also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
Here today, gone tomorrow. 'Cause you volatile like the water. And you promise what you don't know. Sometimes it's right and then it's so wrong. Then what will I say, then why? Promise you the world.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Caplets for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Caplets. This has been Medifact for Panadol.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. Coming up shortly, one of our complimentary segments, Business News. In it, Comforter Modo reports that federal government is taking further steps to mainstream e-commerce in business transaction for value addition, and that's as it plans to upskill 5 million Nigerians via internet connectivity. Let's join her now.
With over 80 million regular internet users, there is no question that Nigerians have fully embraced technology, the internet, and their various uses.
With the growing need to intensify the nation's quest to become a more digital economy via e-commerce, the federal government has continued to evolve ways of ensuring the nation's economy recovers faster than expected. The latest measure, being spearheaded by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, is an alliance with the Nigerian Entrepreneurs Forum and Organization of Women in International Trade. The partnership is aimed at ensuring the adoption of e-commerce and business transactions, value addition to exportable commodities, raising funds and building capacity for MSMEs.
Portal has opened, people are registering, asking for different kinds of assistance, and including capacity building, technical support on how to package their things, how to export, and so on and so forth. And this is domiciled with the NEPC.
Especially using the African Continental Free Trade, where we can have more women participating in trade across the globe and helping them support so that they can understand how their products can be developed, how their products can stand side by side with any products coming from any of the international country or African country.
In another development, investors lost 167.10 billion naira.
Many thanks, Comforter Modo, for the business package. Coming up next for us now is Newspaper Review.
All right, time now to introduce Bayo Atoyebe. He's looking at me. Bayo, did you know that they say life is good, especially on a Friday?
Yes, because expectation of the weekend.
It's not that though, because Kingsley, I'm sure you know about this, Friday is said to have been named after a goddess named Friggs, and that means beloved one. Now, she's the god of fertility and marriage, who is very secretive, knows all, but speaks very little.
I see, now I understand.
Now you know why everybody wants.
Yes, it is also the Eid of the week. And for this Ramadan, it becomes very, very significant. Before you eat away my time, let's get an newspaper review.
Kingsley, you want to start with the Nation?
Well, that's, the Nation newspaper has a window page above the nameplate, says, Buhari, governors and leaders condole with Adeboye over son's death. That's on page 7. He lost his 42-year-old son in Akwa Ibom. Mbaka's action shakes Catholic Church. Bishop calls for 1-week prayer. Suspended NPA MD Bala Usman for probe. That's on page 5. And below the nameplate, 66% make 5 credits in NECO. 66% make 5 credits in NECO. Kano Oke's new minimum wage for lecturers. Gumi raises hope on varsity students' release. That has to do with students of the Greenfield University in Kaduna. And the list story, of course, is a bit predictable now for most of the papers. Insecurity, that's the kicker, are challenges by service chiefs and others. Military top brass parley with senators. More policemen killed in attacks on stations. Sultan calls for prayers and vigilance. 53 headers intercepted in Niger. And you can see the photograph there of the security agents interrogating the herdsmen yesterday. This is the boundary area between Niger and Kaduna states.
Kingsley, I think all the stories you've read are also running on the front page of the Punch. I'll just pick out those that are not there, and that will take me to the very top of the mast, which says $1.5 billion Port Harcourt refinery repairs begin, and project gets 44-month deadline. There's also reps summon NNPC, CBN, FIRS, EFCC probe illicit financial flows. It's on page 19. And that there's also other stories trending at the foot of the paper, particularly the one on SS2 girl missing in Abuja school after permission to fix uniform. That story is on page 4. And you see the excited faces of the parents of the freed Kaduna students as they storm the school, and of course the victims in hospital. Bayo, which is your pick?
Well, let's start with the story about the freed students. Sheikh Ahmed Gumi says bandits who abducted students of Greenfield University have agreed they will not be killed. The cleric revealed that when the parents of the Free 29 College Forestry of Mechanization visited him, he told them categorically that they have now been able to speak with the criminals, and they said they will not kill them again. They have lowered the bar, to use his language. He said, you know, they had threatened to kill the Greenfield students after a particular date, but after talking to them, they are now lowering the bar. We are still negotiating. He declared, I hope the Afaka case will also encourage all to know that there is hope in negotiating and the release of our children. He explained that his role and that of Chief Olusegun Obasanjo is that of mediators. He said the fight is not between us and them, but between the bandits and government. What we understand from them is that these people are trying to attack the government by attacking government institutions and taking innocent children. He said that there were many up and downs, but luckily, in the long run, we are happy. All of them are now, none of them have been killed. That is the Afaka students.
Okay.
But we are still negotiating to get our students freed. Government, there's a report that Kingsley read about government attacking the police station in Obosi. In Obosi, yes. Unfortunately, 2 inspectors who were on duty stood bravely to defend their station when gunmen raided it around 11:30 p.m. They came in 10 vehicles and using very sophisticated weapons. Unfortunately, those 2 inspectors succumbed. The criminals not only set people in detention free, they also set the facility ablaze. The attackers, which Daily Trust reports, says that security experts suspect they are members of the Eastern Security Network. He says this is the militant arm of the IPOB. The attackers came in a convoy of 10 vehicles and were armed with sophisticated weapons. In another development, sadly, another policeman was also killed at Obiazara police station in Ohawazara, a local government area of Ebonyi State. Like the Anambra pattern, they also drove in a convoy, and the main police station was burned down during NSAS. The current one is a makeshift one, which they are using. They still went there, attacked the policeman, and still burned down the temporary police station.
I'm just wondering what will be the attraction in Obosi police station. Bayo, if you know the location of Obosi and where the police station is, it will give you an insight of, that this is an attack by a group of people who actually know, who understand the terrain very well, who understand the locations very well, because it's way off. Obosi is way off, yes. It's way into the community. If you're coming from Onisha, it goes down to, I think it's after Mpo. There's a place called Mpo, and it veers off,
The worrying thing is that, if you remember in the immediate past, as far back as September 2017, the Inspector General of Police, IGP Ibrahim Idris, declared a dismantling of roadblocks. Similarly, on the 17th of December 2018, the same Inspector General of Police said roadblocks nationwide should be removed. So this has given a free passage. You will recall that most of these attacks in the southeastern parts of Nigeria come up with earliest is 11:30. Most of them are 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and the highway is free. The last time they attacked the police headquarters in Owerri, they are said to have driven all the way from Anambra through. So, yes, there were dangers with police stations, with the dangers of extortion and the inconveniences of delaying traffickers. But what we have gained in advantage is the free passage of criminals now, because there are no roadblocks, there are no checks. You also recall that when they started Operation Crocodile Smile in October 2016, it was first started. Later on, you now have the other one, what do they call it? There was Crocodile Smile, and there is also the Crocodile Dance. Initially, people were saying, what was the need of this? But for the successive Christmas, people there have said that they have had peaceful Christmas compared to when we had those operations. The emphasis is that the absence of these security measures is giving a free field to criminals.
Well, Bayo, thank you. My concern is, what is the motive behind the incessant attacks on security agents and their formations? Is it simply to seize weapons and then boost the armory of the attackers? If the whole idea is to say that we want to seize weapons, why are you then also burning down the police stations and their vehicles? And assuming they have any legitimate, you couldn't possibly have any legitimate cause by going on the spree of arson in different parts of the southeast. Assuming the whole idea is to say, yes, we'll be on our own. When you are on your own, there will be no law and order. Which institution will be responsible for the maintenance of law and order? Are you just going to be going about the street and you say you are maintaining law and order? So when you tear down, you burn down police stations, you eliminate policemen, who then are you going to recruit into your own police force? So it's a very, I don't know whether we have paid sufficient attention to the motive so that we also know how to deal with it. If you recall, part of the strategy of Boko Haram in their early days was to be attacking police stations and also attacking police officers, and then, of course, attacking financial institutions where they were collecting money until they now grew into a monster that we are still grappling with today. What is happening in the Southeast? I think that's a very important question, and it is not just sufficient now to say, okay, let the security agencies deal with it. There are opinion leaders, respected elder statesmen and other senior citizens in the Southeast. Are they going to continue to just watch their region go up in flames?
Well, Kingsley,
like he alluded to, if you recall, when at the earlier days of Boko Haram, policemen, custom officers, and other uniformed men could not wear their uniform in the larger part of Borno. They will always go in mufti, and when they get to the office, they wear their uniform because they became a subject of threat. Until they attacked and killed General Swa, then you have the youth in Maiduguri rose. That was when they drove Boko Haram out of the city and they went into the bushes. Gradually, by the time they finish with the police, they will now be heading towards other security agents. When they finish with security agents, it will be the citizens.
Bayo, I must thank you. I must thank you. But as members of the Fourth Estate of the Realm, we have to keep up our duty of, speaking out and a constant reminder. And hopefully, those in charge, will be kept on their toes. Bayo, thank you once again.
Thank you too.
And do have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend. And that's it for this part of our program. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Like every mother,
I'm worried about dangerous insects, especially mosquitoes, which spread diseases like malaria to my loved ones. This year, I'm not afraid. I'm using new Mortein Insta-Kill. New Mortein Insta-Kill's improved formulation knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster. Not even a single mosquito is spared because even one mosquito bite can cause malaria. Mortein Insta knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
Life is a game. We are cool. We are trendy. Energy moves us. Sports is our game, our oxygen. Because with the round leather, we ball, we hustle. All over the land, north and south, we are united in the positive glory. We are encapsulated by HIFL. We live for the game. It's game time. Showing on NTA Network.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, before we get into the details of the 2021 flood alert already issued by NISA, let's listen to this background I put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The rains are here again, bringing succor from the initial heat. To farmers, it is the signal for more planting activities to take place. Despite the good omen many attach to rainy season, an annual ritual of flood alert from relevant government agencies and antecedents of death and destruction bring about apprehension, especially for many people in rural communities located on floodplains. Last year, the devastating effect of the rain was felt in many parts of the country, with properties destroyed, farmland submerged, and many lives lost even when the alert was given beforehand. The flood outcome this year has already placed 28 states of the Federation, including the FCT, on red alert. They include Abia, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Cross River, Delta, Ebonyi, Edo, Gombe, Imo, Jigawa, Kaduna, Kano, Kebbi, Kogi, Kwara, Lagos, Nasarawa, Niger, Ogun, Oyo, Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba, and Zamfara. This now calls for precautionary measures to be taken by all levels of government to avert or mitigate impending disasters. Also, people living along the waterways and those whose socio-economic activities thrive on the flood-prone areas are being urged to relocate to safe areas or higher plains in order to prevent loss of lives and property. Residents are also being urged to desist from dumping refuse in the drainages in order to prevent blockage of waterways. Lagos State government has already predicted intense rainfall for 261 days in 2021 with attendant flooding. Communities in coastal and low-lying wetland areas of the state have been directed to move upwards to avert needless loss of lives and property. Now, what more measures are required to prevent or manage flooding this time around? And do the various state emergency management agencies have the capacity to manage possible humanitarian crises that could arise? These are some questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
Well, Yemi Ajayi, capacity, that's always a challenge, for agencies, especially when it comes to risk management. But thank you very much for the background there. Let me quickly introduce our guests to discuss the 2021 flood alert. They're right here in the studio. And Engineer Clement Nze is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NISA. He joins us live right here in the studio. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Abbas Idris is Director General also, but of the Federal Capital Territory Emergency Management. Live here with us in the studio. Good to see you again.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, we have two other guests who are with us this morning. Let's welcome Kayode Fagbemi. He's Director, Relief and Rehabilitation at the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Mr. Fagbemi, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you for this privilege.
And also joining us is Engineer Okechukwu Ofie. He's a retired director. He was in charge of irrigation and drainage in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Mr. Ofie, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to the conversation, as is almost usual with us now when we are discussing flood matters. Engineer Nze, we will begin with you.
Thank you.
We have had the background there. We have also had a news report on the flood outlook for 2021. But just indicate to our viewers, what are the highlights of the flood alert for this year? And so what makes it different from preceding years?
Okay, thank you. It was actually yesterday, 6th of May, that the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, made the public presentation of the flood outlook for 2021. And from the flood outlook as presented by the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, 28 states having 102 local government areas have been placed on red alert. In other words, 102 local government areas will experience a severe flooding. Parts of those 102 local government areas will experience severe flooding. In addition to another 302 LGS, which will cover the entire country with the FCT, are going to experience some degree of flooding of certain magnitude, but not as severe as the 102. Then the remaining 351, they may or may not have severe flooding. Actually, that is the summary of the prediction. So more or less, it goes across the entire country.
From the number you have given, the number of states and LGAs communities likely to be affected, if we do a comparative evaluation between what happened last year and this year, are there lessons learned?
Actually, the last in terms of number
yes.
of LGAs, this year's prediction is giving us higher number of LGAs that are likely to be inundated in the course of the year. So maybe as we progress into the year and into the discussion we are having, more facts may be made available. But from our prediction, we are seeing that more states, or more LGAs rather, will be affected in the course of the year. If you add 102 plus 302 is about 423. And again, like we always mention, this is a prediction, although predicated on facts, on figures, on measurements, physical measurements on site, because the agency has the measuring equipment across our rivers, major rivers in Nigeria and their tributaries, rivers Niger and Benue, which are transboundary, and we can't control what happens upstream of these two major rivers, and then the tributaries within Nigeria of these rivers. So anything could happen outside the shores of Nigeria, but we monitor it virtually on a daily basis so that we can be updating the nation.
Well, Engineer Nze, well, I still want to stay with you. I recall 3 years ago we had you in the studios, and that year, I think it was sometime in July or so, June or July, we had earlier had a conversation around the issue of expected rainfall and flood earlier that same year. Then that year, you said, look, the floods are still coming, and they will be heavy. And so we should be prepared. I remember you saying that, and you said that the key moments or the key times will be sometime in September of that year, 2018. And I never forgot that, because I took a flight from Abuja to Lagos. It was a propeller aircraft. So, you know, the altitude is usually limited, 14,000 to about 18,000 feet. And around the River Niger trough, we are there, the confluence area with River Benue, all you could just see was brown, indicative of brown waters. And it went on, you know, for several minutes into the flight, indicating a number of places that had been flooded. Of course, Anambra was also affected, Delta was affected, parts of Edo North were also affected. So, well, the rains are just starting now. But what is it that we can look out for in terms of the timing of this year's rains? Urban flooding, of course, arises from poor maintenance and so on and so forth. But in terms of rainfall and in terms of the flow from the major tributaries that feed our major rivers, what is it that NISA should let us know?
One, it is an established fact. The year you mentioned, that was all the month, that should be July. This is the climax, this period or these 3 months of the year remains the major critical months of the year of flooding in Nigeria, what we call white flood. July, August, September. And at time, depending on what happens upstream, it could increase until the middle of October. Like in 2019, it was as late as October 10th that Cameroon opened their dam. When there was no much rainfall in the northern part of Nigeria, the dam was open, like the dam in Cameroon, 10th of October. And they kept spilling water until 30th of October. And then, of course, Taraba, Adamawa, Benue, and Co. became submerged. Now, the pressure still remains the same. That this is the critical area when the rainfall in the northern part of Nigeria is heavy. For instance, from NIMET prediction, rainfall is supposed to begin, and it did actually, as they predicted it, from around 1st of March. But in Sapele, it was the 5th of February, along the coastal part of Nigeria. And when they tell you 1st of March 2021, that's rainfall onset by NIMET. You say plus or minus 5 days. And in the northern part of Nigeria, they said latest should be June 29th. Maybe far north, like Sokoto, part of Katsina. Now, this is the period when it will begin to rain heavily in the country. I mean, northern part of Nigeria. And of course, whatever happens upstream within Nigeria, we find this the way down to the middle belts and then southern part of Nigeria. And also by this period, other countries, upstream of River Niger, like Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin Republic, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, will be having their major rainfall at this period. And it begins to come down to Nigeria. So the scenario still remains the same. But we track it to be able to inform the state governments contiguous to the rivers Niger and Benue as the flood evolution begins to manifest.
What are the extreme weather conditions that could probably precipitate, intense flooding? In some of the reports I read, we understand that there probably will be constant rainfall, heavy rainfall for more than 20 days or so. Is that
really? There's a change in pattern of rainfall, maybe climate change issues of variability. Before, you used to have prolonged rainfall. Maybe growing up, I witnessed it. At times, people will not be able to eat in the morning because you have to go and harvest the yam to cook. But rain, before you work, in fact, it will be raining almost all day. But these days, you could see that you will have rainfall of high intensity but short duration. The rainfall that you are supposed to have in 3 months, like what happened in Jigawa last year, it occurred within 11 hours. There's the measurement you do to measure rainfall. My colleague and friend, Kayode, can say more on that. Rainfall, how you measure. But what they have been experiencing in Jigawa for 3 months happened within 11 hours. In other words, like when we were growing up, we see children being fed with water, they will be drinking and their tummy will be bloating. And so long as the child is crying, keep giving water. So we didn't know it was wrong. So when within 11 hours, rainfall of about 2-3 months, fell within 11 hours. You know what it means? The ground has been choked. Whatever now falls becomes a runoff everywhere. So we don't understand this is what is happening currently. Rainfall of high intensity, shorter duration, as against rainfall of having long duration, as against what we're having now.
Okay.
So that aggravates flooding all over the country.
Okay, Engineer Oze, thank you very much there for your opening comments. We'll, of course, keep you still. But let's go over to Engineer Okechukwu Ofie, who, of course, is an irrigation expert with specialty in flooding. As we indicated, retired as a director in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Engineer Ofie, well, always when we discuss flood and flooding, one of the issues that often arises has to do with the fact that the floods are causing a great deal of devastation because of the nature of our dams. The dams are not being effectively utilized, again, at the subnational level. And then the dams are also not being well maintained. We have a great deal of siltation. What is it that you can tell us more about, say, the state of the dams, what is being done on account of our experiences in recent years?
Very much. Dams, as a matter of fact, can provide a good control of this flooding if the dams are operated very well. What do I mean by this? With the forecasts we now have of what the inflows into the dams will be, that is what NISA has done by providing forecasts of the runoff resulting from the rainfall. You can now see that, you can now anticipate, this is what is going to come into your reservoirs. Now, there's what we call reservoir operations, You operate your reservoir in such a way that you can accommodate, if you're expecting a lot of water into the reservoirs, you can operate your reservoir so that you can absorb these large inflows. Now, in the Ministry of Water Resources, I know that the National Water Resources Institute have developed codes that will enable us to operate our reservoir so that we can accommodate every users. You see, why do we need to operate our reservoirs? Because dams are built for multi-purpose uses. If you can use dams to control flooding, you also need the dams to provide water for other uses like irrigation and water supply and power generation. So you must strike a balance. That is what the reservoir operation does. You strike a balance in operating the reservoir so that you can utilize the dam for everything. Now, if you have information like information we have now ahead of time, the NISA has given us information ahead of time of what the inflows into these dams will be. Then it behoves on the operators of the dams to use these codes, which are already developed by the National Water Resources Institute, Kaduna, to operate the reservoirs. Of course, these codes, has to be customized for each of the dams. You operate them in such a way that you can optimally utilize the dam to meet their requirements. This is what dams do. Now, on the major rivers where you have Kainji, Jeba, and of course, Shiruru on a tributary of River Niger, you have about 22 billion cubic meters of capacity. If you do the operations in a way that is scientific, based on this information that is coming ahead of time, to a large extent, it can control the flooding within the Niger Basin, within the Niger Valley. That is what dams can do. And of course, you have other smaller reservoirs across the country, which can also be operated so that you can optimally utilize the dams to meet your requirements as well as control flooding.
Okay, let me bring Mr. Kaide Fagbemi, who is Director of Relief and Rehabilitation. I'm wondering, we've been told that states within the Niger and Benue Trough, and those are the coastal, areas, mostly are likely to be impacted the most. Why is that? Why is that the case?
Okay, thank you very much. Last year, 2020, we had the privilege of using the special aircraft from the Air Force to do a mapping from Kebbi through Kogi State to Bayelsa. And what we discover is that it's a special aircraft called ISR that crashed months ago. What we discover is that many of the communities are built on the floodplain. That's the truth. And why do they build there? For economic purposes. One, they need water. The government or whatever have not piped water to where their community should have been. So they move closer to use the water. The floodplain is very fertile. They want to begin to do farming. They also do fishing. So we discover immediately we have, what is called floodplain is that when there is excess runoff getting into the river, they move to the plain. It's not for human beings to live in, but many of them have been colonized and their communities are there. And the truth is that it's not like an urban area like Abuja where you can go to demolish immediately. How do we move them off? Even when some of these dams are constructed, EIA, environmental impact assessment, was done, and communities were recommended to be moved. But they didn't move, and they were left. And so when they are left, because what we are saying is that we want to control a dam, as the last speaker said, dams can be used to control. They can also be a source of flooding, a source of problem. And so what do happen is, he mentioned many of these dams that are for multi-purpose, power generation, irrigation, domestic water uses and all that. I will give a challenge to NTA and to other stations. Let's go around all those dams. They are not used for irrigation. If they are used, where is the food? So during the last dry season, how many of them were really used for irrigation? And when you don't use this water, they are there. You are impounding this water. Not only that, they are not used. They are built for hydroelectricity, apart from Shiroro, Kanji, and Jeba. This and that, some of them turbines were brought, but they were not installed. And so the water is just there. We build this dam, the water is just there. And then when this water is there, and it becomes critical during the rainy season, it is then we become, the dam managers become, afraid, and there's panic release of water. And that's what happens. They will give information that they are releasing water when there's already overflow in the cities. We have compounded everything caused flooding. Why we have many urban floodings now? Okay, our environment. How many of us really want to have garden? We go to an area, we clear the whole area and build houses. Everywhere you have built, water can no longer percolate. Then you didn't want to have garden, you want to have clean environment. So the next thing you do, we begin to put interlocking spots and all that, blocks and all that, and then we pavement everywhere. So we are increasing the runoff. This runoff must go somewhere. So by our actions, by many other things, we have caused more flooding. So those by the banks of the river, they will continue to experience it. Yeah, it's becoming, just recalling every time we go to rescue people, we have to do relief, and we just have to do something. Okay.
I just want for you to paint a picture for us. For instance, I know the experience along, the Abuja-Lokoja road when it floods, and also some parts of Niger State. It was quite devastating. Give us a picture of what might happen if action is not taken, this year. Okay.
We are lucky because of the predictions we have from NIMET and NISA. And so we begin to escalate it to the authorities, the governors, the federal executive, and also we cascade it to the communities and all that. So the people are aware. What will happen is that those communities will be flooded again. But I want to say something. The communities, they have developed some resilience, to be honest. Bayelsa, nearly in some communities, all the houses were flooded, but there was no record of one death. They've developed some resilience. They know how to navigate. They have canoes in their houses. So you will see them. When you see, there's some people will even be cooking inside the floods. It's terrible because they have no high ground to move to.
But that's not the message we are sending, is it?
No, that's not the message. What we are saying is that we need to take structural actions. We need to dredge River Niger, River Benin. If we don't dredge, during dry season, just go now as you fly, over, you will see River Niger. You can even cross and see very tiny river. Then during rainy season, you see it very large because it's already silted. We need to dredge River Niger so that it can accommodate more water. The soil, you see, the soil and all that coming in silted, and because we farm around the floodplain also, it makes it easy for the soil to go into it. It has made the river incapable of holding large volume of water. Okay. And so the community are the ones suffering. Is Ibaji, for instance, the local government in Kogi State and all the other areas there, they suffer every year. In fact, it is a continuous suffering that we are looking for how we can work with the state and ensure that these people are really relocated. They should be moved.
Okay.
That is the solution.
Mr. Fagbemi, thanks. Yes, let's pause you there. We will return to the issues that you have raised. I know that one of our regular guests on water issues is the Chief Executive of the Water Institute in Kaduna, Professor Emmanuel Adanu, has also emphasized one of the points you just raised now. It's become a status symbol when you build your house, you have paving stones all over the place. I mean, if I were to come into your property now and it's all natural earth, the tendency would be to say, no, this man doesn't have money to pave it. But there are hazards to that. As you said, that there's no percolation. And when you look at the built-up environment, it's increasing every time. Plus, of course, the small islands you see during the rainy season on the River Niger and River Benue. Abbas Idris, Director General of the FCT Emergency Management Agency. Now, let's bring you into the conversation. Last year, your agency took some proactive steps. I remember there were evacuations in the Giri area, but you also met with a great deal of resistance. People were saying, where do you want us to go? Where do you want us to go? And those who were adamant were the ones who were impacted when the floods came in that part of the Federal Capital Territory. And of course, there was a very unfortunate video of a man in one of the estates in the Federal Capital, right here in the Abuja city, who was being warned off a flash flood. It got swept away, and that was that. But for this year, are your men already out again, warning those who are in flood-prone areas to say, look, get off that location before it's too late?
Well, thank you very much. And I must commend the two agencies, that is NIMET and NISA, for the early release of their own outlook and the prediction by NIMET. This serves as an early warning, not only to we the responders, but to the Nigerians all over. Because flood issues is no longer an agency affair, it's multi-agency affairs that everybody must get involved. And we are aware that flood has come to live with us, whether we like it or not, either naturally and as a result of the climate change. So we need to be very, very proactive, especially the response agencies like ours. What I feel is the best that we can do is that sensitization and early warning, which as our agency has been in the forefront. We have commenced the sensitization of the community in the FCT a long time before even the rainfalls commence and even before we get predictions from these agencies. Because we believe that we will use our own data from the previous year and look at what really happened and what was the cause of such flooding in the FCT. Under normal circumstances, the way FCT is planned, we are not supposed to have flood as we are having. Urban flooding and flash flooding, yes, it can happen, but not to the extent that we are even losing lives in the FCT. So we have to say, look, what is really happening? And we discovered that it was the actions or human-induced activities that caused flooding in the FCT. People are contravening the master plan, are contravening the building codes. And so we became so proactive along with other stakeholders because we can't do it alone. There are agencies that are given approvals, and there are people who also design and approve the design, the building design, and all that has to be done in line with the master plan of the FCT, because the master plan of the FCT has captured all the floodplain and all the other hazard areas. And we also, as an agency, have carried out the hazard mapping of the entire city, including the vulnerability and capacity assessment of each community. Like Mr. Kaido was saying, the resilience that some of the communities built is as a result of the daily sensitization that we give to them. Because if you wait for somebody to come and evacuate you before you move, then at the end of the day, you will be swallowed by the water. So we build their resilience, and then we also educate them to inform them that where they are seated, where they are located is really a hazard area that they have to leave. And if they don't leave, we definitely have to bring the agency responsible, especially the development control, and to come and clear the place. And I think we made success stories from 1998 to date when we demolished more than 200 houses in one estate. That's Lokogoma, in that area. In 1999, we couldn't had any issue with Lokogoma. And so the same thing with the other area, Galadima roundabout, which was a confluence point, I can say, for about 9 districts. The water comes to that end, and it happens that there is construction going on. So we had to trace where the problems were, and some have extended their building to the river bank. You are supposed to allow about 25 meters away from the river, and you would just move it and raise a high wall to protect it, and that has to be removed. And some others conscripted the culverts or the drainages, and that is also giving us problem. And when you come to also urbanization, people are building every day, and like Mr. Kayode said, it is very difficult for the water to really go down. So this, if the run of water has not gotten a way to really go, the end thing is to get to any house are available closer to. So we have sensitized, we have done the local sensitization, we have done the media, and we are still doing the media. And my brother can testify to that. He has been joining us in this campaign. And then Good Samaritans are even reporting these days in the FCT. If there is any contravention, they will call us and tell us in time. And so we move in and remove whatever structure that is there that can block.
You talked about mapping the areas of impact. Yes. Which of the areas in the FCT are high impact areas in terms of flooding?
Well,
for now.
Yes, for now, Kubwa is 1. The Amak is 2. Gwagwalada is 3. Abaji is 4. So these are the high probable areas that we are expecting flooding. Yes, but that does not mean that other area councils will not have flooding as well, because of the activities going on in that area, especially Buari. When I say Gwagwalada, I mean Kubwa is part of Buari, but I mean the Buari town, like Buari and other Pape, because of the activities, the excavations and blasting that is going on around that area.
Okay, Abbas Idris, thanks a lot. Again, we'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's go back to Engineer Okechukwu Ofie. Engineer Ofie, while you were speaking, you did say that if the dams are properly managed using data from the Water Institute, then, as Kayode said, there might be no panicky release of water at the wrong times. Why did you say if? And if that is the case, enumerate the constraints, in your opinion, with the management of our dams. Well, Engineer Ofie, it appears you didn't get my question. I will just paraphrase myself. You said that one of the challenges that we are having with flooding relates to, shall we say, improper management of the dams. Therefore, if the dams were properly managed, then of course we could mitigate the extent of the yearly flooding that we get. And I'm asking you, could you enumerate what constraints there are with running our dams?
Well, the issue is that, in providing enough control, for the dams to provide enough control, you need to have information on the inflow dynamics. The inflow dynamics is how much water you are going to get into the dams. And when you have this information, you'll be able to manage this information in such a way that you provide space in the dam to accommodate the incoming flow, as well as provide enough storage to meet your requirements. So what we have now is a lot improvement in what we used to have in the past, because you can now have information months ahead of time that this is how your inflow dynamics will be into the dams. Now, what is now required for the dam owners is to develop operational strategies, guidelines on how to manage what is coming into the dams. So if you have your information ahead of time and you also have a management strategy, you'll be able to control whatever you have. Sometimes you can release water from the dams and then you're not able to meet your requirements. Take for instance, people who manage the hydropower. They are always very mindful of the fact that if they open their gates and reduce the water levels, they will not be able to produce electricity. So having the accurate information and using scientific methods to operate your reservoir is key to success. Because if you have your dam, you must achieve what you build the dam for, as well as control other things like flooding and other things. So these are the major things.
What responsibility is it to feed the inflow dynamics you talked about for the dams to be effective flood control mechanism?
Yes. You see, this issue of inflow dynamics has been a problem because, take for instance now, we are in May. The floods have not started coming in, but you have information already that this is the likely way it will go. It will enable you to plan ahead of time. In the past, we didn't have this before 2013, when this flood outlook started, when annual flood outlook was initiated. Nobody had any information about what the thing would be like. But with development, like the meteorological services now have information ahead of time. As early as February, they already know what the rainfall pattern will be. That is the information they provide are utilized by NISA in doing what they are doing. Now, the operators of the reservoirs will now take off from NISA. It's like a relay. They will take information from NISA and be able to use the information to manage their reservoirs. Let me say it here, dams do not cause flooding. If you have a dam, for instance, my engineering tells me that dams, on the contrary, controls the magnitude of the flow that comes out of it. What do I mean by this? If, for instance, you have about 10 cubic meters of water as your peak coming into the reservoir, by the time it goes through the reservoir, you have less than 10 meters. That is what dams do. But what causes problem is that when you do a panic release, like dam operators, when they feel that if too much water comes into their dam, that their dam may give away, they will open their gates, certainly. But if they leave their gates the way it is, and the dams are filled up and spill, you end up having less water spilling through the reservoirs than you had coming into the reservoir. That is exactly what engineering says. But you see, people always say that because you have dams, that dams are causing flooding. No, dams don't cause flooding. On the contrary, they control flooding, even if you don't operate them. But the problem is when you do the wrong thing by doing a panic release, you suddenly open your gates more than required, then you begin to flood downstreams. That is exactly what happens.
Engineer Ofie, thank you very much for your response. I do not think that it's a view here in the studio or even out there that dams on their own cause flooding. As you have indicated, they serve many purposes. But where dams are not properly maintained, where you have siltation, and then what you just talked about now, there is no available information about the inflow dynamics, then you have issues arising from the use of those dams. I was just wondering, I mean, you are retired, and so there probably might be no risk of your colleagues saying, look, why are you saying X, Y, Z on air? Whose responsibility is it to utilize this information from the Water Institute with regard to inflow dynamics, so that there is responsibility attached if it is a department or a unit in a particular dam, who is supposed to utilize the information there? I don't know when the National Water Institute gives out its own information, but from NIMET and NISA, we already have that. And our experience up until 2020 would tend to indicate that apparently, even though information has been coming out with regard to inflow dynamics, we don't appear to be getting the proper utilization of such information in the management of our dams. This is on the face of it. So what would you like to see done?
Thank you very much. You see, we have dam owners across the country. We have dams that are owned by the state government, dams that are owned by federal government. Some of the dams are owned by, private individual, private companies. Some dams are owned by the three major dams are owned by companies that are now managing them, but they were originally owned by PHCN. Now, what I mean, if you want to operate your reservoirs, it has to be operated in an integrated way. What do I mean by this? Let me take, for instance, the Sokoto Basin. The Sokoto Basin covers essentially what we call hydrological area 1. It comes in from some of the rivers coming from Katsina area, flow into Goronyo and Bakalori, and then they come in together and join River Niger. Now, if you want to do the reservoir operation I'm talking about, you have to involve the owners of the dams in those areas. Some of the dams are owned by the river basins, and then the major dams are owned by Mainstream, which is the company that is managing Kainji and Jeba. You see, you must do the operation in an integrated way, because what flows into River Niger at Jidere Bode, for instance, comes in from Sokoto, Katsina, and all those areas, and there are dams in those areas. So the National Water Institute developed a code. What I mean by code is that these codes are to be customized for each of these reservoirs. They will still need to go further with those codes to develop guidelines for the operators of these reservoirs to be able to operate the reservoirs. And then when they develop these guidelines, they will do it in an integrated way so that if you're operating Goronyo, for instance, and Bakalori, you take into consideration all other users, how to control flooding within KB, Sokoto, and all those areas, as well as providing enough water for NEPA or for the operators of the reservoirs to be able to use them for power generation. So it's an integrated, that is the concept of integrated water resource management. It's not something one person will do. I remember in those days, we in water resources were having meetings with all the agencies around trying to harmonize our operations. I've left the system for about 4 years, but I know that something like that must be going on, because if you want to have an effective operation of the reservoirs, all the users must integrate, because what goes on in Sokoto affects what is going into River Niger. In fact, during this white flood, a substantial part of the water that is coming into Kainji comes in from Sokoto Basin. So you must take into consideration what is going on there. And a different person is operating the major reservoir. Goronyo is large, Bakalori, and you have other dams even upstream of Goronyo, which are also managed in a different way. So the integration of this management is what I'm talking about. The codes we I'm talking about are to be specific for each of the reservoirs, because the inflow dynamics is different. The way the reservoirs are also different. The shape of the reservoir is different, and the uses of the water from the reservoir are different. So you develop them according to the specific needs of the reservoirs. I think that I met the people from Institute Water Resources last December. Unfortunately, the young man died from COVID shortly after I met him last year. He was planning a workshop where he would bring in all the users, all the dam operators. He was planning it early this year, but unfortunately, the young man died from COVID late last year. So the focus then was to bring the operators of various reservoirs and see how they can customize what the Institute Kaduna has developed, so that each of the dam operators can take up the codes, see how they will customize the codes to suit their purposes, and then they will be able to use it in an integrated way.
Engineer Okechukwu, thank you. We'll, of course, return to continue our conversation. We'll just take a quick short break. And when we come back, we'll bring in Engineer Clement Nze to respond to some of the issues regarding inflow dynamics to the dams. Don't go away.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
She also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day.
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Life can be very eventful. We curiously expect things to happen, even when we don't know what. Our human nature makes us like and repost lots of information. Some are unverified, inciting anger and hate. Sometimes innocently, other times the urge to break it first. This, in most cases, has caused destruction in many nations.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, welcome back. You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service. Now, just before we went on the short break, Engineer Okechukwu was talking about, of course, synergy between all the stakeholders in the flood management system. And I said that Engineer Clement Nze would speak to that issue as soon as we are back. It would appear that the information, that the early warning information that you dish out to the stakeholders, it will appear as if they are all operating in silos. There's no integration, there's no mainstreaming of such information. So you heard Engineer Ofie talk about the need for mainstreaming the inflow dynamics, for the dams to effectively control their flood.
What he mentioned is quite apt, is quite true. But then before I go further, there's a big challenge we have in the system. We are having aging staff in most of these establishments that manage the dams. Quite aging staff. For instance, as minute as may I look like, the person who's giving us a reading for Jidre Uroboki, our measurement today, where River Benue enters Nigeria, the first point of measurement in Uroboki in Adamawa State, is over 70 years of age. Who gives us data on daily basis? The one who gives us data for Lokoja, the confluence, downstream the confluence, is well not less than 75 years of age. But that's what he had been trained while as a youth. So he does it very fantastically. But then, such a person should have been given some time to go and rest and do other things. Come to the people who manage the dams. You may not have that kind of capable hands in terms of expertise to handle some of those activities. Now, you give information, like Engineer Ofie mentioned. The dam operators, their main target is to ensure that they are generating power. The issue of using the knowledge available out there to operate their dams maximally or optimally, they're not able to do that. Last year, around July, or August rather, we got a red alert from upstream of River Niger, from Niamey. Once Niamey gets flooded, we must get flooded in Nigeria. So I was on my toes, relaying the information to the Kainji and Jeba dam operators that this is the flood level in Niamey, measured at in Niamey. And this is the evolution, the time it will take to propagate down to your dam. And once it gets to your own dam, Jeba Dam is downstream about 100 kilometers downstream of Kainji. And then I was also monitoring what is happening in Shiroro Dam. River Kaduna is a tributary of River Niger. These two dams or three dams are managed. Kainji and Jeba are managed by one company, mainstream, while Shiroro is managed by, I think, North-South, the Energy Sons, I can't remember the full names. Now, if they are able to utilize this information you give to them, they will know the time to begin to lower the reservoir level. Expecting this huge amount of water or flood coming in, that will still enable them to optimally operate their dams and do their transmission. But oftentimes you may not get that. Only once there's a huge amount of flood coming, like Engineer Ofie mentioned, you have a panic release, and that floods the downstream. Again, I agree with Mr. Kayode. If you go to most of our dams in the north, you will see huge volumes of water, billions cubic meters of water stored in our reservoirs, year in, year out, not being utilized. And then they remain there, the flood season comes, and then because the dams are not being utilized as they are supposed to be, water is just being stored there behind the reservoirs, behind the dams. It will give rise to flooding. That's when the dams will topple the threshold. I thought I got most of the dams, whether Bakalori Dam, Shiroro, Kainji, Goronyo Dam, in Sokoto. Bakalori is in Zafra, like we mentioned. We know their capacities. But the issue of utilizing them. But at times, like what happened in Goronyo Dam in 2017, when the dam almost dried up because of siltation and then released, not following the operational manuals. You are just, maybe Zamfara needs water, you must give them water. You don't know what is happening, the catchments upstream that they feed into the dam. Most of the waters or the rivers change course that no longer even come into the dam. And then you keep releasing water, before you know it, the dam is like what happened February or so, 2018. But Goronyo Dam, you could virtually wade it through. Now, so much siltation like is being mentioned here. So we need a lot of work to do in terms of synergy. Those who have information, who give a forecast or prediction, those who manage the dams, or even the users of the dam, like the state governments, there should be a kind of harmony, integration of ideas to ensure that the dams are properly managed. You don't shortchange one need or the other.
Engineer Oze, I mean, thanks a lot for what you have said and indeed what the other guests are saying this morning. One of the policy implications of this is the point that you just made now, that there is need for greater synergy amongst all stakeholders in an integrated approach. It appears to me that the National Water Council could be a proper forum for that. The National Water Council will take in all of this, but more specifically for this year, what needs to be done? Claire, it appears to me also that because of our energy challenge, that's to say we are looking for electricity, probably the key focus on those dams now has to do with just generate power.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Not necessarily a holistic management of the dams, part of which you just utilize for that. So, yes, Engineer Ofie says that there are owners of the dams. Those owners also have a responsibility to utilize those dams for purposes for which they are designed. Otherwise, there could be implications. There are consequences. I mean, when you have that, and then you, because of, let's say, inadequate or poor management, it causes havoc down the stream. So, but we do hope, as we said, that these are policy implications that will be taken into consideration. Mr. Kayode Fagbemi, I would like you to also speak to another issue. We're discussing flooding, but these are perhaps the deeper issues that we need to consider to enable us mitigate flooding and also utilize flooding for very healthy purposes. I remember Professor Adanu always talks about that flooding also comes with effluents and the nutrients that are useful for the soils. But you said that we would need to dredge the River Niger. I recall some years ago, I mean, there was a great deal of excitement that despite the fact that for decades the dredging of the River Niger had been on the cards, they had done the capital dredging, and what was then required was maintenance dredging. So what are you asking for?
I'm from Kogi State, and I passed through, Jamata, and I saw what dredging they were doing. That was not dredging. You are digging the sand and putting it just by inside the same floodplain. Before one rain or two, the sand came back. We all traveled. When you go and see those big rivers in UK, in Europe, and all that, you see, you see how they have made a lot of embankment. There's no how that those, you see, even the rivers are clean. And you can use them for transportation and all that. What they did was not dredging at all. They just tried to look at for some meters within the river channel and dug the soil away, or the sand. And then what happened? Eventually, the sand just came back in. Because, they didn't move away the sand. I'm not an engineer, but I think I saw it. And I was saying, is this what they call the dredging they want to do? And I think if we are going to do a proper dredging, we should calculate what meters of the flood of the channel and the floodplain that should be dredged, and move away the sand and put an embankment, because the sand you put, it's just like our drainages and gutters. When you move away the dirt, I see it in FCT sometimes, they put it by the side again. So gradually those things get back to the drainages. And so that's exactly what was done. So we need a proper dredging, and we must not think of completing it in a year. If you are starting from Kebbi or wherever, let's start. If you can do 1 kilometer in 1 year, do 1 kilometer. Put it in the budget. Finish. The another year, you do another kilometer. And I think that's the way we need to do the planning. And as I said, is part of the integrated flood management, making sure that the land use, the basins, and every other areas are brought in together, the users. And that is exactly, so my brother, the dredging that was done was not they were only trying to move away the sand for transportation, but the sand came back into it.
Well, Mr. Fagwe, thank you very much for your view. That's quite worrisome. We do hope that they get back to the dredging. They said they did it for, I think was it about 2.7 or 2.5 meter draft to enable flat-bottomed vessels to ply it. I'm sure that is an issue that we'll return to. But it's a big-ticket venture, obviously, and not something that can be achieved almost immediately. I want to bring in here Abbas Idris one more time. Abbas, I know the FCT, of course, maybe because of the benefits you have in being co-located with NIMET, NISA, and NEMA, your response is very swift. We have also seen what is happening in Lagos. Lagos, because of its topography, also it's up and running. Before now, the Commissioner for Environment, Tunji Bello, had been issuing various pieces of advice and getting on with sensitization. But there's one aspect I would like you to speak to, because I don't want you to make comments on, but perhaps I could have asked Fagbemi that question with regard to the preparedness of other states to contain the flood, because oftentimes everybody's just waiting for the federal government. That's one thing I want to ask. When persons who are living on the floodplains, and there is a flood alert such as this, and so look, move to higher ground. The complaint is we have no higher ground to move to because there is no temporary accommodation. What kind of challenge do we have with acquiring prefabricated structures, such as you see with the UN and other agencies in emergency cases? I mean, where you have refugees and internally displaced persons, these houses are set up almost immediately, and they spend weeks and sometimes months in those locations before, even years. They are quickly fabricated, and then, but here you say move to higher ground and the people are under trees.
Well, you see, if you compare our own setup and the countries you are comparing them with, there are proper law and orders. People follow the laws. They didn't build on the flood plains. These people that were saying move to the higher grounds, they are building, or they built on the flood plains. They have been compensated to leave that place because it is a flood plain, but they remain there. That notwithstanding, in FEMA, we have acquired those tents that you are talking about. By the time we ask them to, we have moved some people to those tents and kept them for 10 to 12 days. And after the rain, they left. And that tent is world standard. It has mosquito repellent, and it has solar power, and it's heat resistance. So this is what we do. But the problem we are having is that people indiscriminately move in. By the time you move these people to higher ground, another people are taking over. Just like everybody is saying, it is good to build on the floodplain because it has economic value. Economic value in the sense that everybody wants to own a house in Abuja, and it is the cheapest land, I always say. Floodplain is the cheapest land in Abuja, and you can acquire it and become a landlord, so you build. And also, you go and start creating some barriers that would block the waters from flowing. in that situation, if we said we follow the flood pattern and the floodplain areas and said we are going to evacuate everybody to a camp, I don't think we can be, the entire responders will not be able to manage those people, because at every minute people are coming to build on the floodplain. And the best way is to remove it, let them move to their own, where they are coming from, because they come for a greener pasture. And some of them that have collected their money, instead of them to go and build at the higher ground, they still build on the floodplain where they were asked to live. So I think we will do that, definitely. But people have to comply with the building codes and ensure that we should know that when the water comes naturally to a higher ground, that is when we can now have an evacuation center that everybody can be moved. In developed countries, it's just by alarm, everybody moves, and then the responders will also go and move those people that cannot be able to go there swiftly.
Thank you, Madam Idris. We will just like to apportion the few less than 5 minutes remaining. Just, maybe our guests will just speak 1 minute. Let me start with Mr. Fagbemi. Mr. Fagbemi, just briefly, since we're talking about checkmating flooding now, and you've talked about people having to move to the coastal areas in search of greener pastures, near maybe water and all that. What lesson might we take away from the way we have managed COVID pandemic? And is it applicable, to mitigating flood?
Thank you very much. December last year, we had what we call 2020 Flood After Action Review. We calling all the SEMAs, the stakeholders, including NIMET, NISA, and the DDG NISA was there. And we reviewed what we did last year and what we need to do. And we learned a lot of lessons. That's why I'm insisting on this dam. We learned that lesson. Well, we also learned that these non-structural measures of cascading this message to the communities. For instance, we had only about 58 persons that died, last year, compared with 158 in 2019, and we had more people displaced. So we have learned a lesson there. So we need to take the information to the people, which we are going to do, ensuring that all our stakeholders go to all the communities to warn them, at least to be aware and they take action. Thank you very much. Any
lesson from the way we have, managed our COVID-19?
Yes. We are also part of the management of COVID-19. Coordination is the major thing. Proper coordination. Before this time, everything was left for NEMA. Everything, when they say flood, they'll say NEMA. But we now say it's not NEMA. We have SEMA. We have other agencies of government that have responsibility. Ministry of Environment, the Planning Division, those giving out CFO, it's everybody's business. So it's not just one agency. So this is the lesson, and we are bringing them together. In fact, we brought in the dam managers. That's why we got the information that we need to do more on the management of the dams. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Engineer Claire Munze. Well, you always expressed frustration with the response of the subnational entities. What lessons did you learn last year, and how do you hope to drive it this year so that at least we are seeing much better results than we had ever seen?
I think the event we had yesterday, I think the signal or the take home from this gives us some light, hope that this year's own will be quite different in terms of response. So many state governments sent governors who couldn't attend in person, sent commissioners. But many permanent secretaries were there. Some people joined us online from different states. Top is the commissioners from different states, joined us online, those who couldn't come physically. And the people were also from outside Nigeria. So I think going by what we witnessed yesterday and what we have put in place we are going to do in the course of the year, before the flooding actually sets in, we are believing that there will be better results to be achieved this year than last year. And people are becoming more and more aware. But we keep asking for more. That just like the governors, senators, you know, they were aggressive in political electioneering campaigns. They should equally key into this, use the same kind of spirit to drive home the prediction we have done. Senators come from localities. Let them mobilize their people, whether using their constituency funds or project or whatever, to find a way to sensitize their communities as to the need for them to take necessary actions as prescribed in the publication in the Outlook to avoid losing any single life, even in 2021.
All right.
Okay, let's take the last contribution from Engineer Okechukwu Ofie. On the part of the people, what are your expectations from them?
Well, it's just that people are very reluctant to take instructions from the responsible agencies who are telling them that they should, leave the floodplains, that there's likelihood of having floods in the floodplain or wherever. My advice is that they should take it seriously, because over the years, the quality of predictions have improved. The first one was done in 2013, and now, more and more accurate information are being used to make these predictions. And we are seeing that, like your colleague said earlier on, that the predictions they did 3 years ago or so was accurate, because when he flew, he saw that what the Director General of NISA was saying was actually coming out true. So people should begin to have confidence in these predictions that are coming from responsible agencies, that if they are told that there will be flooding, they should take it seriously and go by the rules, so that they will, save their properties and lives. This is my candid advice.
Engineer Ofie, I just want to ask this question. We didn't have enough time to talk about it, but very briefly, irrigation, which is one of the ways of also utilizing the dams. While you were in service and even post-service, what do you think is the major challenge that state governments face in utilizing dams for irrigation?
Well, the major challenge is the development of the infrastructure. Irrigation infrastructure is very expensive to develop. And, providing enough resources to develop this infrastructure is a problem. And additionally, too, the developed irrigation schemes were not, government managed them, And before I left the service, a program came up to transform the management of these irrigation schemes and devolve the responsibility to the stakeholders, to the farmers themselves. Because over the years, when government was managing them, most of them ran down, and they couldn't sustain the services. So the one key thing that came up before I left the service, which I'm sure is still going on now, was to transform the management strategies and devolve the responsibilities to the stakeholders, people who are the farmers themselves. And it's working very well. In Bakalori, for instance, that was the one we were doing before I left the service. And understand that the stakeholders, the owners, as the farmers themselves, are the ones managing these schemes, and it's working very well. So if this thing is replicated across the country, this, devolution of powers, it will make it possible for the dams, the waters in the dams, to be utilized where you already have the irrigation infrastructure, and you'll also encourage development of irrigation infrastructure in the areas where you don't have them already.
Okay, Abbas, what's your message to FCT? What are you expecting from them?
Well, I have two messages. One to the stakeholders, the responders, that we need to synergize in terms of really our own response. That will give us really strength in handling the situation. And secondly, to policyholders, we also need to imbibe the culture of risk management in whatever we are doing. Like the management of dams, we don't perceive any risk associated with it. So therefore, it's becoming a problem now. And so also other policies that we are having. We must put risk management into it.
All right, that's Idris Abbas, Director General of the Emergency Management Agency of the Federal Capital Territory. We thank you for being our guest this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We also would like to appreciate Kaude Fagbemi, Director, Relief and Rehabilitation of the National Emergency Management Agency. Thank you for being around on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for
We're joined
having
by
me.
Engineer Okechukwu Ofie. He is an irrigation expert, retired as a Director of Irrigation and Drainage in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Thank you very much for your insight this morning. And last but not the least, the Director General and CEO of the Hydrological Services Agency, Engineer Claire Munze. We appreciate you for being with us today. Well, Claire, we have some tweets. Speaking generally, the experts have given the more specialized knowledge. But we'll, of course, appreciate those who sent in their tweets. I'm sure they would have benefited from the tremendous amount of information and insight provided by our guests. Mike Ayankwo, Dele Jack Solomon, Law Alfasi, Utulo Sunday, Suleiman Babagana, Chris Simeon, Titus Monday Nonk, Festus Akimboewa, and Oyewole Ola Samuel. We appreciate the tweets that you sent in. Whatever issues you had, obviously, were addressed by our guests. And that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today, and indeed for the week. Do take care of yourself. Enjoy your weekend. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And do please stay out of trouble. I am Claire Dilabo Abdul Razak. Always remember that you can be a star by connecting with us, that's the NTA, and stand against rape and rapists. From all of us here, have a good weekend.